Some of the biggest changes in TBC you may have forgotten about. What is this?
WillE here. Today I wanted to go over some of the larger changes that happen in TBC that you might just have forgotten about. Throughout the duration of vanilla WoW back in the day, there was certainly a lot of experimentation as to what actually works for talents, itemization, and how each class performed in their various roles. TBC built upon all of these things massively. Of course, many of us are expecting that we're going to be releasing on the final patch of TBC, patch 2.4.3, just like how we released on the final patch of vanilla, that being 1.12. And by this point, there were so many more big changes that had entered the game that made your experience so much different than they would have been at the start of the expansion. Some of these are more impactful than others for sure, but I think everything...
Is it a protection paladin or holy paladin? If TBC is out, I gotta be playing Protection Paladin. I just want to be tanking. Protection Paladins are lit.
Thing I'll go over today will either be in from day one or not at all, as these aren't really big changes that defined a patch back during TBC, but certainly went a long way to change how the game was played. So let's get into it. Area of effect damage caps. So I touched briefly on this in another video. Today I'm going to give you the full rundown of how exactly they work. This happened in patch 2.2 and was put into the game more or less to nerf AoE farming techniques that have been going on for some time. If you need to understand why AoE farming had to be nerfed, go type Mara 1 pull into YouTube and see for yourself. And people hadn't even figured stuff like this out back in vanilla either. Also, some of the info on the caps is a bit lacking, shall we say. Honestly, this could be something where Blizzard needs to go and have a proper look into their reference client later on down the line. I'm going to give you the theory on how it works. As for what the damage caps will actually be for different spells, we'll have to wait and see on that one.
If you have more mobs after like 10, your DPS is basically going to be less and less and less and less and less. So you cannot be just killing 300 mobs and doing the same damage to everybody. You're just gonna be, the damage is going to be spread. Okay, each rank of a spell has a damage cap. Once that cap is reached, the spell will deal less damage to each mob in a zone, so the cap is not exceeded. The cap does not scale with spell power or talent, so the better gear you have, the faster you reach the cap. To give a hypothetical example, say we have a spell that does 100 damage per tick and a damage cap of 1000. Versus one enemy, each tick deals 100. Against 5, each tick still deals 100 to each enemy. And at 10, all 10 enemies take 100 damage per tick. Once we go over 10 though, each new enemy we add is exceeding the cap, so the spell deals less damage overall. 11 enemies would take 91 damage per tick, 15 would take about 67, 20 would take about 50, so you can see how quickly your AoE damage is reduced. They ditched this system mid-Wrath of the Lich King, by the way, because it actually made your AoE scale worse the better your gear gets, which doesn't really make any sense. Spells that were AoE capped include Blizzard, of course, Frost Nova, Rain of Fire, Volley, and the biggest offender of all, Hurricane. We can't let Moonkins be good now, can we? Other spells that were AoE capped too, like Arcane Explosion, and some of the healing spells too, I believe. So come TBC, there will be less emphasis on AoE grinds, though I'm sure people are going to figure out some clever way to work around this. Next up, the level 20 to 60 XP nerf. This happened in patch 2.3, and maybe another thing that gets in from launch, or maybe even pre-launch. Then again, if people are hitting their level goals faster, then they may be stopping playing faster. Maybe it won't be an after all. This aimed to get... Oh, the experience granted by quests has been increased between levels 30 and 60, so you can actually get to level 60 faster, and then you can be focusing on TBC content. I think I understand why some people like it, but I also don't understand why some people don't like it at the same time.
You from that character create screen to Outland quite a bit sooner. The changes reduced the amount of XP required for each level between 20 and 60 by about 15%. In total, this meant that a character after the nerf to the XP who had just reached level 60 would have only been around level 55 previously. That's quite a big difference. On top of this, quests above level 30 now also gave more XP. Certain outdoor elite quests had also been changed so that they were much more accessible to solo for your average player, and dungeon loot had largely been reworked just to make them better than they were previously. On top of this, the level range for certain dungeons were narrowed. Blizzard wanted you to be able to fit.
In Classic, this chest gives you spirit, intellect, stamina, agility. Why agility? What the hell?
Finish a dungeon if you're a high enough level to start it. Alderman is a pretty big culprit of doing this in Classic, where it starts off at the mid to late level 30s and then the last boss is level 47 for some reason.
Yeah.
And not to forget an entirely new questing hub in Dust Swallow Marsh called Mud Sprocket to help you through the level 30 to 40 bracket a little bit easier. I don't ever remember having any issues around that level bracket personally, but hey, it's a new place to check out, so that's not a bad thing, I guess. It's a neutral questing hub too, in case you were wondering. Questing has always been such a huge part of WoW, and well, there are just less people in Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor come the later phases of TBC. Keep in mind that this update was in 2.3, which is the Zul'Aman patch. The more I think about it, the more I could see this coming at a later patch potentially. Let me know what you think. Another one from 2.3, and this one I can certainly see being in from launch, the Guild Bank. So much drama has happened over the years, from the wrong people getting permissions to this communal storage facility. This was pretty much made so that guilds no longer had a designated banker that only one person could ever really control. Through doing this, a bunch of trusted guild members could distribute, organize, and store items needed by players within the guild. This was far more expensive than any personal bank was to unlock fully though, costing many thousands of gold to get hold of the later tiers. Having a look online for the exact prices, they do escape me a bit at the moment, but as far as I'm aware, to have a fully unlocked guild bank is a 5-digit figure. Either way, this will be a very nice addition to allow guild masters to much more easily store items in preparation for different phases coming. So that's 2 changes from patch 2.3, but why not make it 3? Because 2.3 was when the dead zone for hunters died. Well, sort of at least. It was changed to be much less of an annoyance. So if you aren't a hunter player or just a class that uses a bow in general, you may not have had to experience this little quirk, but ranged weapons have a minimum 8-yard range. When inside that position, they could only melee you. However, melee range is 5 yards. This means if you position yourself well between these two values, a person cannot hit you with any attack that has a range requirement. There were still some exceptions, even for hunters, such as scatter shot, but they were largely completely disabled. In fact, this is pretty easy to do in game. Once you've had a few goes at it, even when you're just questing, it's quite easy to sort of just stand near a mob and get it to come into melee range and stop being annoying shooting a bow at you. Here is the message from Blizzard regarding this change. This was really huge for hunters, like absolutely massive. What it basically did was make your auto shoot and auto attack the same button, and it would automatically swap between one or the other, which made hunters so much more smooth to play.
I think this was a really good change. A really good change. At least you can be still doing some kind of DPS. In Classic there's just, yeah, I didn't really know about these dead zones, but I felt it, and now it's explained why.
Especially in PvP scenarios. Let's just hope we don't end up with batching in TBC, or it may end up not being so smooth after all. Well, wait and see once you play it. You'll instantly notice how much better it feels to play. At least I think so. Oh, and you can also do this now as well. Yep, traps work in combat, but they do have a 2-second arming time. At least it frees up Bane Death for dodging spells now, more than just being a combat resetter. Either way, hunters get some real love in TBC. Okay, so you may know all of those so far if you're quite an astute follower of TBC content, but what about this one though? Apprentice riding could now be learned at level 30, down from 40 of course, making that horse Raptor or Kodo Dream alive 10 whole levels earlier. The format in which riding was done was changed as a whole in TBC actually. In Classic, the riding is cheap and the mounts are expensive. This was flipped on its head in TBC, which really started people's ambitions to start collecting everything in game. For example, Artisan flying is 5,000 gold, the mounts are 200G. On top of this, we no longer had the riding that was tied to a specific type of mount, so you didn't have Meccano Strider piloting, Night Saber riding, Raptor riding, or Wolf riding, or whatever else subsections exist. It was just like any other profession: apprentice, journeyman, expert, then artisan. This was more of a flavor thing, to be honest. In the past, you still needed Exalted to use a mount from all non-character specific reputations, as far as I believe, at least from the vanilla era content. Finally, and I guess this one is a little bit different as it's player reactions to how the game.
I think that if you wanted to, for example, ride a tiger from Darnassus, you just need Darnassus reputation, and you need the Darnassus riding. I think it's a good thing for Classic, and it should be stayed. It should stay in Classic. But in TBC, we are moving forward. We are a little bit more progressive. But I still think that thing should stay in Classic the way it is.
Changed, but I thought I'd give it a mention all the same. people having 2 level cap characters of the same class, one specifically for PvP and the other specifically for PvE. No, really, people did this back then. I had a guy in my guild who did this back then, actually. And I think we're going to be seeing far more of this than we ever did before. If you think min-maxing at the top end with WillE buffs is mad, just wait till you see what some players will be doing in TBC to min-max their characters. Okay. So let me give you the basis of why people felt the need to do this, because there are actually some very legitimate reasons. Number 1, respec costs. Logged in a couple hours before raid and fancy doing some PvP in the meantime? Well, I hope you have 100 gold that you don't mind throwing down so that you're going to be able to perform well in both activities. Honestly, I'm going to talk more about this in a later video. I think there should be a separate set of talents for instance PvP, like arenas or battlegrounds. There's so much less interaction with PvP because people don't want to buy into that respec gold sink. And yes, I know gold starts getting inflated with TBC because of daily quests. It's true that it's not as hard to generate it as it was in the past, but even though respec cost is designed to be a gold sink, it really just feels more like a pure deterrent that people aren't buying into at all. I'm going off on a tangent here, but having a dedicated PvP character,
fellas, hopefully it's not the corona, you feel me? Okay.
Means you are always spec'd correctly. Just imagine at present being a Fury prot warrior for raid and then trying to do some battlegrounds that your spec would just be completely useless. Number 2, and this is the bigger one, professions. So in TBC, professions are more important than they are in Classic, and by a pretty large margin as well, to be honest. And for many classes there are optimal PvP and PvE professions, and they aren't always the same. In fact, they are rarely the same. In PvP, pretty much everybody wants to go enchanting, as without it you can't get access to ring enchants at all, which are all fairly...
Oh really? That's... yeah, exactly. You need enchanting, but at the same time you need leatherworking for actually PvE, because if you don't have a shaman you can be using like kind of like leatherworking bloodlust. That is like weaker version of the bloodlust, but and you can be... it's just for yourself. So what some like hardcore guild requiring is that everybody will actually have leatherworking, and then when they say bloodlust, everybody, and they don't have like, let's see, they had no shaman at all, they would just activate their personal bloodlusts from leatherworking.
Minor, but they are a numerical advantage over those who didn't choose that profession. There's no discussion about that. If you're a rogue, you want the engineering goggles, which slightly increase stealth detection. Yeah. Everybody knows how important it is to get the opener as a rogue, and this profession allows you to pick up an item with this effect that is also very well itemized. Classes that use two-hand weapons, rep pallies and warriors, will want to be blacksmithing, specifically a master hammersmith for Deep Thunder, and later everybody's favourite RNG pinata, Stun Herald. It's the same story for Enhancement Shaman.
Not for the... I was thinking that the Swordsmith is the beast. Okay, whatever.
Dragon Strike and later Dragon Maw, but they can also use them very well in PvE. Onto the PvE side, we can talk blacksmithing again, because now you would much rather be a master swordsmith to get Lionheart Champion, which can later be upgraded to Lionheart Executioner. This is especially important for raiding arms warriors in the earlier tiers. Pretty much every single caster wants the Spell Strike Hood and Pants 2-step bonus, which requires 350 tailoring, which on top of having all the stats you want as a caster, the 2-set's very good as well. There are also sets that increase certain spell schools like Frozen Shadow Weave. Tanks will be considering engineering early on for the stackable Goblin Rocket Launcher trinket that has a hefty plus 45 stamina on it. And then we just have level working as a whole, with drums of battle being rotated, with everybody in your group having level working. It's a permanent plus 5% haste buff. Speaks for itself really as to why you would want that. Make no mistake, I fully expect some players to have 2 Mega Gear characters so that they can min-max that much more. Of course, this is a lot of effort in terms of regrinding levels, reputations, and even getting some PvE gear from badges early or raids later on, which end up topping pretty much anything you can get out of PvP. Some trinkets come to mind, or warglaives of course. Early on in the expansion though, I can for sure bet that there will be players doing this, so do consider what you like best and how much performance matters to you as a player carefully before you...
Those Illidan warglyphs, goddamn, so beautiful. Fellas, I'm just so excited for TBC. TBC Classic is gonna be lit, I can promise you, and afterwards I'm pretty sure there's gonna be also Classic Wrath of the Lich King. It's gonna be lit, fellas. The future is looking bright.
You opt into one set of professions or the other. That'll do it for today. Did you remember all of these at all? Looking back through TBC patch notes, I always feel like I'm finding stuff out that I had forgotten about.
Fellas, please, in the description you can find a link to the original video. Please leave a like and also subscribe to WillE. He's a really good content creator. Also please leave a like and comment on my channel, subscribe to my channel right now. It's really helping the algorithm. Please just subscribe and like right now, and write me in a comment what video am I supposed to check out in the next one. It really helps. It really helps, and I really appreciate you. Thank you for watching. I think TBC is just lit. TBC is gonna be super interesting, and I think TBC is a better expansion than Classic. I think that I said it in many more videos before, but Classic is basically just like it started, you know, and when you start something, it's not gonna be the best, but afterwards when you're improving, then the product is getting better and better and better. Or it's the same, like for example, you start to play football, it's your first games, they are really important, but then you're just improving, getting better, more polished. It's the same thing. The TBC is just more polished, more balanced, so more specs are viable. We are talking about balance droid, we are talking about shadow priest and stuff like that. So yeah, it's gonna be amazing. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.